Hello, rodeo fans. Welcome to episode 38 of the Short Round, the official podcast of the Canadian Professional Rodeo Association. I'm your host, Wacey Anderson, and I am extremely excited to welcome back my co-host after a brief hiatus for the school year. Cowboy Christmas is here, and so is our expert and again my co-host, Clay Creasy. Welcome back, buddy.
Thanks. It's great to be back. I been following rodeo like I usually do, but it's always fun to get back on here and get talking about it and just celebrate our cowboys and cowgirls that we've got going up and down the road right now. Things are really hitting the rubber and the mud.
Yeah,
I
no, it's been
get to
a great start to the season so far. And kind of hinted at it. We're just entering the Cowboy Christmas phase. We had a big weekend wrap up in Sundre and Wainwright just a few days ago, and yeah, it's been an awesome start. I guess let's kick things off, Clay, and kind of look back at some of the actions, some of the big winners from those events. I guess one thing to note, High River and Bassano both got postponed due to the weather conditions. I think it rained about, I was in Sundre all week. I think it rained about like 5 or 6 inches. It was insane, but still good to have two big rodeos happen over the weekend. But yeah, why don't we jump into some of the big winners that you picked out over the weekend, Clay?
You bet, and props to Barb at the with the website and her stuff that she puts out for bringing up some of these. But starting off, the bareback riding's usually our first event that we start with at a rodeo, and crazy not to talk about somebody coming out with some big wins with Ty Tipitat. I mean,
Mhm.
going into this weekend had $191 won. Again, came out of the CFR and 2024 just really beat up, needing to take that time. Trust me, I'm old enough. I worked briefly while supervising some dead kids and pulled muscles both times. So I know that age thing where you think you can do more than you can. And I know he spoke about figuring out how to take care of his body and he sure used all that work to make some big money winning Sundre with a 86 and a half on Calgary's kind of monster
Mhm.
horse Born Fearless. When I talked to Rob Schmidt the other day, he'd called about some help on some horses and I had talked about that horse during the CFR last year. He's just a man among boys in those other
Mhm.
horses loaded. And I mean, Ty made a great ride and then jumps out on a real nice one, a Duffy's reservation there for an almost the same score, almost the same money, 86 there, and just jumps right up into the top 12 there comfortably and gets his season off to a tremendous start just ahead of this big weekend coming up.
Yeah, it's always good to see a guy like Ty healthy because he's always a threat. Like he's a Canadian champion for a reason and can make those big time rides. And when he's healthy, he's just as good as anybody we got going on the road right now.
Absolutely. He's just a phenomenal competitor, has been from the moment he cracked out in the CPRA and he's won on both sides of the border and great to see him back.
Another guy who had a big weekend, Dawson Hay, who's having probably his best season to date. Currently sitting second in the world, picks up 2 wins over the weekend. What'd you see out of Dawson?
That Friday night perf in Wainwright, just stuff wasn't quite working for a lot of those horses, including the horse Dawson had drawn originally. Horse
Hmm.
stumbled a few times, but it works out when you've got Vold's Alberta Moon sitting in the re-ride pen. He's able to jump on that and made just a sensational ride. And he's been making those all year. You listen to the stuff down south, and I mean they've been bragging about the number of 85 point rides he's been making all season. Well, 89 and a half, just pushing up against that. You couldn't have scripted it any better. And I know a couple years ago he actually had kind of a similar thing where a re-ride got him the win in Wainwright. So he's not going to argue with getting on an extra horse if it pays that much better. And then goes over to Sundre and get on a nice horse of Calgary's called Easy Margie
Hmm.
at the win there. I mean, made over 7,000 between those two rodeos last year. Didn't really prioritize Canada, worried solely about making that NFR and pushing down there. Had enough money, but not enough rodeos. This year, I think where he's at and just the number of rodeos he's already got under his belt, you're going to see him pushing for a Canadian title as well as that world title. So great to see things just really coming together for him.
Yeah, he's really riding with a lot of conviction, it seems like lately. I watched back, I got a video of his ride in Sundre and watching it back, like he is beating the horse to the ground every jump. Like he is firing on all cylinders right now. So it's gonna be fun to watch Dawson as we move through Cowboy Christmas here. Another big. It was kind of interesting. We had three people kind of either win both or split a win one place, win the other. But Suzanne DePauli had a great weekend, winning over $10,000 on the weekend, and she's looking to make her way back to the CFR in Edmonton.
You bet. And, she was 23rd coming into the weekend. There's no doubt that she will leapfrog a ton of barrel racers and get herself in that mixed in the top 12 here right now, which that'll continue to change the rest of the season. But you'll never argue with making over 10,000 bucks on two runs, and especially all of the elements that those barrel racers came up against at both of the two,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and not having to go to the other two because they were swimming it. To get two good runs like that, it's tough enough, and good on Suzanne. I mean, she's just an amazing competitor, has been for so long, and just an even better person. Like,
Hmm.
couldn't ask for anything better for someone like Suzanne. So awesome job splitting that win in Wainwright, earning second in Sundry. I mean, maybe it's not top place at both of them, but definitely paid. Gotta you gotta beat a lot more people in the barrel racing to get that high a placing. So good on her.
Yeah, it's been crazy to see the amounts. Even like, I mean, scale wise, maybe when you try to compare the PRCA, it's not a whole lot, but I mean, the amount of money we've paid out and seeing how much people already have won the Canadian side is pretty impressive. We don't really see these numbers this early in the year, if you want to say that we see more of it as we get through Pinoca and whatnot. But yeah, it's been cool to watch. I guess just wrapping up this kind of weekend recap section, Clay. Kyle Lucas, he didn't have any luck in Sundry, but he swept the board in Wainwright, and he's looking really good to make his way down to the yellow shoots for the first time.
No doubt, and I a blind squirrel gets a nut every once in a while. We did our predictions there this winter about what's a bold prediction that
Hmm.
you want to see the year. Mine was that Kyle was going to either win Canada or make it to the NFR, and boy, after he had that huge weekend down in San Antonio and Tucson this winter, to really just throw him into that, I think he's well on his way. And yeah, to 40% it out of Wainwright there, and making 8-7, 8 runs there, and come out of there with another 7 grand. That's going to help him with a lot of his goals for this year, and it's just awesome to see.
Yeah, it's fun to watch, and Kyle's one of those guys too. Like talk about Dawson Hay and Ty Tapetat and everyone else. Like when he's firing, he's tough to beat. So, it's going to be really fun. It's good to see some Canadians get building some momentum. As again, as we're gonna pound on it here. It's Cowboy Christmas, and this is the time to make some big money. So, good to see our Canadian contingent making some moves. I guess well, that'll wrap up our kind of recap part. I think Clay, if anybody wants to catch up on unofficial results or catch up on the release, head on over to the Canadian Professional Rodeo Association website. Everything you need to know is there, and kind of reiterating what we've talked about just now. But Clay, I want to look ahead to the next week or so here. We got a full slate of rodeos. We got Fort Macleod, Pinoca Stampede, Williams Lake, Airdrie, TP Creek. I'm probably forgetting a few in between, but I mean it's going to be a huge run,
Oh, there,
and a ton of money coming up for folks to win.
no doubt. Can't forget the Raymond Stampede
Right.
there.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, but no doubt there's a ton of money to be won, and your competitors that are also looking to go south. I mean, the miles that they're putting on this next little stretch and the money they're hoping to win, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. You alluded to that with what people already have won in the standings. Well, when they put out their Cowboy Christmas top earners, you see that over the last few years just continues to
Mhm.
climb, and no doubt it's great to see. I mean, that Pinoca Stampede just keeps adding money. We're going to see breakaway roping there for the first time this year. I know I saw last weekend last week they'd had a breakaway rope and jackpot there to let some of them competitors get a chance to get a feel for that arena, get an idea what that setup's going to be like, to really make sure that they put on just as good a show as they do everywhere else. And yeah, you got Williams Lake, another tour rodeo. Fort Macleod and Raymond, I mean, those ones coming along here just really beefs up that weekend. And Airdrie has been a long-standing good rodeo, so no doubt we're going to see some big moves. As much as some of these we just saw in this last weekend with two rodeos,
Mhm.
was big. We'll see some enormous jumps, and people, again, you win Ponoka, that can be your only rodeo, and suddenly you're leading Canada.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy the amount. Yeah, and that's kind of, we can talk about that a bit more about that, Clay. Kind of focusing on the Pinocchio Stampede. They upped their prize money once again this year. The bull riding has 90,000 added, just given the rollover from last year's four round or championship round. Um, it's gonna be game changing money for whoever wins, and not just the bull riding in any of the events. You're gonna be walking out of there with a pocket full of change if you can get some work done.
Absolutely. And I was looking at our world standings and seeing where some of our Canadians are sitting right now. We've got the Graham brothers that are also kind of in a
Hmm.
somewhat comfortable looking spot at sixth and seventh right now in the world standings. But geez, that event's so close. And then in the bronc ride, and the interesting thing, we're usually looking at 6 or 7 Canadians in the top 15. Well,
Hmm.
right now we've got from 16 to 21st, we've got 6 Canadians in that spot just on the outside. And it's going to be a dogfight. They're all going to fight there. In 16th, you've got Stetson Wright as well. So, he's not going to go
No.
away. The guys that are already in the top 15, they don't want to jump out of there either. So, some of our more seasoned guys that have been on the inside by this time of the year have got some work cut out for them. But that we're going to see those guys going, and they're all riding so well. It's going to make for a great stretch here.
Yeah, and I'm throwing on the spot here, Clay. I think before we wrap up this section of it, why don't you? I'll go first just to give you some time to think. But think about a couple storylines or a couple people you have your eye on as we head into that Pinocchio Stampede week or Cowboy Christmas as a whole. I know for me, looking at a guy like Zeke Thurston, I think it's been a bit slower of a start to the season for him. I don't think that's any fault of his own. I think it's just the way draws have worked out, whatever it may be. But once he starts drawing the right horses, watch out because he's going to get on fire and start making some moves. And then another one. I guess another pair would be Cavis Drake and Denham Ross. Those guys have had a hell of a June up here. I think they're hungry, ready to rumble, and they could be a big threat heading into this big Cowboy Christmas run here we got going on.
You know, you probably shouldn't have went first because those probably would have been the two that I
That's why I wanted to go first, so you couldn't take it from me.
like. Zeke, yeah, he's not where he's usually at. I'm not too worried about him.
No.
Anybody's going to find a way to get in there near the top. It's going to be him. But on the same note, I know he's building an arena back at home.
Hmm.
He's got his master class kind of academy type situation he's working on building. He's got a lot of irons in the fire. I mean, he's not just a competitor anymore. He's a brand,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so I know he's been working on a lot of that end of things. So I think we'll see him say, you know what, family, you got that end of things. I'll go do what I do best, and this next stretch will be there. And absolutely, Cavis Drake and Denham Ross. I mean, they have just been roping phenomenally.
Mm.
It's what they're doing is just incredible these days, and so they're going to be good. I think I go back to Kyle Lucas. I'm just super pumped to see him going. Be great to see Bo Cooper and even Logan Bird. I've
Hmm.
been
Hmm.
really impressed with just seeing him go down there and picking away down south. I think there's all kinds that get to the top of the heap, and he'd be one that probably wouldn't believe himself to be a guy that could make it to the NFR, but he's just so consistent and knows how to ride, knows how to rope so well that I'd like to see him make that push as well and give
Oh
himself
yeah.
credit there. And
And he's right
and
in the mix too. He's currently 20th in the world, only 8-ish thousand out of it. So yeah, he's definitely a reality for him at this point. And with a horse like Peso, anything's possible.
oh, for sure. But
Yeah.
even just Peso, I mean, you look at, I mean, he's just got such a stable of horses going up and down the road for himself to use, for anybody else that needs a horse.
Yeah.
He is set up everywhere, and he's just an encyclopedia. So you talk about those guys that have that competitive edge. Uh, on the other end of things, I think again, looking at our breakaway ropers,
Mhm.
going to keep going there. You look at a competitor like Jenna Dallin. I just
She's
she's
rolling.
rolling and going to keep pushing here. And another one that I hope to see breaking through even more is Sawyer Erickson. You see that
Mm. Hmm.
Aaron Wildwood. Really, I know he had that birch bubbles at the CFR, and it maybe didn't go quite the way he wanted, and he showed up and showed out there, and he's firing up and down the road as well here, and that next guy that will hopefully see punch his ticket to those yellow shoots here in no time.
Yeah, he's been fun to watch these last few weeks. It's gonna be a great couple weeks of rodeo, man. I'm excited. I know you're excited. I think the rodeo fans themselves are excited. And the show doesn't end here this week. I'm really excited this week. I was finally able to track down Doug Young and sit down with him for an hour and have a interview with him. So I'm really excited for everybody to hear that. And we'll be checking back in with you, Clay, I guess after the end of Panoka. We'll bring back the half point for the summer while we're running through the summer run here. So let's leave it there. Thanks for the time, my friend, and let's throw it to Doug Young. Hello, rodeo fans. Welcome back to the Short Round Podcast. I'm your host, Wacey Anderson, and today, our first live on location pod of the year. I am stoked to be surrounded by a couple legends in the announcer world. I've been working on getting this guy on a podcast for years now, so I finally got him trapped in a hotel room in Sundre, Alberta. My friend Doug Young, legend rodeo announcer, and I've recruited my friend Robert Schmidt as our guest host today. So, Doug, finally.
Feeling kind of awkward, Wacey. Yeah.
It's a different medium for you guys because you're used to be doing like live hits on camera or live hits in the arena without a camera on you guys when it comes to like CFR production or whatever. But yeah, the podcast world is a little bit different for you guys, eh?
Yeah, we've got no action to talk about, so we're kind of stuck.
Well, this is the one time where you guys get to be the action. I don't know, like Robert, you could probably speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit like we're right in the hot seat right now. We never know where this is gonna go.
It's funny because I feel some people maybe not know this, but I actually had to announce a pro rodeo a few years ago. Dave Paulson had to go to PBR and Red Deer, I think, so I was stuck announcing the team roping and the bull riding during the Rocky Pro Rodeo, and that was like the most. I was like terrified of doing that.
That was the same weekend. That was my very first pro rodeo weekend.
Yeah,
I was in Brooks.
So I don't know. So it's funny that we're sitting here and you guys are kind of thrown off. Where I can't imagine being what it's like being in the announcer stand, coming up with stuff.
It's easy to talk about your friends.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, and that kind of leads into some of the things I want to talk about with you, Doug. I know you've been around this game for a long, long time. And one thing that I'm constantly impressed by is how you're able just, no matter what the situation, no matter what's going on, could be the biggest lull. And actually Sundre's a pretty good example of this because I think last year at the Saturday and Sunday perf were 6.5 hours each, but you guys didn't miss a beat. So how do you find a way to just keep on rolling even when it gets drawn out like that?
Well, there's always something to talk about. You know, there's always horses and people and things going on, and the committees are always awesome. Mm-hmm. I can't believe that people donate their time and take time away from their own things in their own lives to volunteer for their community. I mean, it's easy to talk about people like that, and rodeo people are easy to talk about, and if you know them, it makes it even a little easier. Mm-hmm. So it's not hard to fill at all. How
often are you like? I know because and especially you've been around for a long time, and you've seen cowboys come and go, and you guys come on the block. Like, how do you find a way to say something about a guy maybe you've never seen before, or a horse you've never seen before, or a bull you've never seen before?
Well, I think they've all got something in common. They've all got that grit to them. You know, they've all got that extra that, shall we say, normal people don't have. I mean, they're all survivors, and they all kind of have the same operating system. So it's easy to understand if you know what you're looking for, kind of thing. You know, rodeo people are good people, and good people are easy to talk about.
Yeah, amen to that. Let's go back to the beginning. There's so many different directions we go with this, and I've had so many conversations with you like this over the years in the announcer stand, but how did your family become involved in rodeo, and kind of when did you start dipping your toes into the announcer side of things?
Well, I'm sure you're kind of familiar with the community pasture system that we had in Saskatchewan, and my dad was a PFRA pasture manager, like Tyler Kraft's dad, like Stacy Cornett's dad. So many of our dads did that kind of thing. And I kind of followed in the footsteps of my dad. I did that kind of thing too. And like your dad, my dad was a wild horse racer. So, a little crazy, a little different. Yeah, that's for sure. A little, why would you do that? But, we were always around horses, and rodeo was the thing that they all enjoyed. Mm-hmm. So, I got to cowboy all week long, and then got roping on the weekends, and became a horseshoer. Got to shoe a lot of horses that were rodeo horses, and it's kind of easy to make the transition. I kind of knew everybody, kind of thing.
Well, then, so what was it like the first time you got to announce? I know you have a cool story how you got your announcing start.
Right.
Maybe we'll jump into that after this. But what kind of drew your interest to that? I know you competed you team roped for a long time.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't interested in it at all. We had what we used to, I guess it would be akin to a ranch rodeo. It was the provincial cowboys against the federal cowboys. And they had that match one year, and I was in the match, and the fellow that they had hired to announce it didn't show up, but he sent the sound system. So they said, does anybody know how to hook up a sound system? And I'd played in a band. And
That's
I
right,
said,
yeah.
well, I can probably do that. So I went over and set up the sound system, and they said, well, why don't you just announce it? And I said, well, I don't want to. And they said, well, no, go ahead. So I was stuck announcing this thing, and Skip Kelleher was there. And Skip owned Royal Rodeo, and Skip was an arena director for years at the Calgary Stampede. And when it was all done, he said, if you ever want to announce a rodeo, let me know. And I said, no, I don't. I have no interest. Nothing. No, don't bother me. So every time I'd see him, and I traded a lot of horses with him, he'd say, do you want to do a rodeo? And I, no. And finally I said, just to keep you quiet, if it's a rodeo so far away with nobody there, I'll do it. So I forget where the rodeo was, but I was there, and I was shoeing horses, and I'd shod horses all day. And I went up to the announcer's stand, and when I was all done, he put a check in my hand, and he said, there, how many horses would you had to shoe for that amount of money? And I looked at it, I said, well, yeah. And he said, we got 6 more for you, and you start next weekend. And that was it.
No way.
That was it. Yeah.
Wow. And the rest is history. Here we are today.
Hit the trail. That's awesome.
Well, I want to hear, okay, I don't know, can't remember if we talked about this last time you were on the show, but your intro to announcing is a great story too, and I want the people to hear it.
Yeah, it's a little bit different and kind of the same path in a way. Like you said, following in the footsteps of your dad. My dad got into rodeo when my brother and I got into rodeo. We're kind of the first, I guess my uncle team roped a bit, maybe even a little bit with Doug back in the day. But once we got into roping, Dad got into roping, we started to rodeo, and I was a team roping competitor for a lot of years, high school rodeos and CCA rodeos, and moved out west to potentially pursue a pro rodeo team roping career. And we were cleaning out gas wells in Medicine Hat, and Keenan Vine had a backyard bull riding at his birthday. And I'm not even sure who he had hired as an announcer, but he lost the announcer. And my boss, team roping partner, Kevin Schreiner, said, I got a guy that'll pick up the mic for you. And it was a wilder time in my life, obviously. But yeah, out of the box of a truck in the backyard of Keenan's backyard, we announced a bull riding. And it was a long bull riding. There was only one bucking chute in the backyard, and a lot of friends and family and beers were consumed during the event. But it was kind of the very first one back in 2005 or 2006 at Keenan's birthday party. And after that, then I never picked up a microphone really again, just kind of off and on. I'd jump on a mic at a jackpot, but nothing formally until probably 2014, 2015, started with the high school rodeos. And again, Tyler Kamita, a local team roper from Weyburn, Saskatchewan, needed a guy for a high school rodeo. And I said, sign me up for that marathon. And since then, kind of never looked back.
The rest is history, same kind of story. Doug, I want to know, I think there's a lot of people who will listen to this who didn't grow up in the earlier days of rodeo and pro rodeo and back kind of when it was the wild, really truly the Wild West. But what can you tell us, like, what was rodeo like back then, like from a production standpoint, from your view of the announcer stand, but what's kind of the stark contrast to what we see today?
No, I don't know. I guess I'm a bit of a dinosaur. I was thinking the other day at Lee Park that I've been going to the Lee Park Rodeo for over 60 years.
Wow.
Holy cow.
And I can remember going to the Lee Park Rodeo as a little kid, and they would gather the horses down off the hill, splash them across the Vermilion River, and bring them on into the arena.
Wow.
And there was no production at all. Everybody just helped out. And there was no metal chutes. There were wooden chutes. And there was a stack of broken planks in behind. and somebody was always repairing chutes, and we'd have to stop every once in a while because they'd have run out of chutes they could use until they fixed another chute. So that's how far back I can go for you.
What are some of the other moments that stand out from those days? Like you say, it's kind of the truly back when the chutes were made of wood and the men were made of steel era.
Oh, yeah. I've been really lucky. I got to see Harry and Wayne Vold as young men. I got to see Airwolf the first time he came to town. Wow. Things like that in that moment you don't realize what you're watching, kind of thing. I got to work with Stan Weatherly a lot. A lot of people that are legends in the sport that, you learn so much from, so good to be around, so many changes throughout the years where the core of what's going on hasn't changed at all. Mm-hmm. They're still gritty cowboys. They're still gritty bucking horses. The atmosphere might have changed a little bit, but the action is just as true today as it was 60 years ago.
What was it like seeing like the Wayne Volds of the world, like when they're young, kind of first coming onto the scene? Like a lot of we get more access to athletes nowadays with social media and everything that's involved. But when you look back on those days, we don't get to know what like Wayne Vold was like when he was 18, 19, 20 years old.
Yeah, they stood out as much when they were young as they do now.
Yeah,
the same type of thing. Yeah, you could tell what was coming. I can remember once shoeing horses at Spiritwood Rodeo, and a pickup truck rolled in, and there was 2 men and 4 boys. And it was Mac McKee and Fred Hay and Doug and Gordy McKee and Rod and Denny Hay in there. Wow. And they were like just a bunch of boys having a good weekend. They were on an adventure. And I could remember that it stood out to me that the boys never called their dads dad. It was Mac and Fred all the time. And then 20 years later, I was at a rough stock match at Wainwright. A pickup truck pulls in, a man at the wheel, 2 little kids with him. It was Rod Hay got out.
Wow.
And it was Dawson and Logan following in behind him, and it was the same atmosphere. And I noticed that Dawson and Logan called him Roddy as well, So that was just the way it was. And it's funny how that continues. And you can see that not only in the people, you can see it in the bucking horses,
Yeah.
Lucky enough to see generations of bucking horses.
Oh,
and you
yeah.
see the same things in the bucking horses that you saw 2 generations ago,
Yeah. It's funny because, like, I feel like the Born to Buck program and all that stuff is really being highlighted lately these last 5-6 years, maybe even say 10, but it's been going on since those days. Like you say, you see these generations of bucking horses come through in specific traits, but what's that evolution been like to watch? Because as Canadians, we're known for our bucking horses now.
Right. I think the neat part of it is to see how much the people put into it and how knowledgeable they are. And, when you sit down and talk to them about it and they'll say, remember that black mare? Mm-hmm. Wow, that's her baby right there, kind of thing. And they love what they do. And to see how far they've come. And, I mean, it's been like 40 years for some of them, and longer. And they're just kind of hitting their stride now, kind of thing, for a lot of them. Like, the horses are better and better and better, Same with the bulls.
It's crazy to see how far the stock has come. And I talked about this with Colby Wanchuk the other day, how I think why we're seeing so many great saddle bronc riders is they've been able to grow up with those generations of great bucking horses. Like, it's just, I'm not saying there wasn't any greats back then, but you're seeing more and more, and like in new waves. You got the Sawyer Ericksons, the Tyrell Roberts nowadays, and it's been like 15, 20, 30 years of just waves of great Canadian bronc riders coming up because we have such great access to horses.
Yeah, I think they all consider it just to be normal.
Yeah.
They don't know any different.
Yeah.
You go to Wildwood, those buck chutes are worn. The pins in behind are worn. The average person at Wildwood has seen a lot of bucking horses, and they haven't left home because there's just a lot of horses gone through there. It's considered to be normal. That's what people do, and in a lot of places, it's not normal. But for them, as good as they are, that's normal.
Yeah, that is what it is.
Far beyond average, and that's just kind of the way it is.
Well, and speaking of places like Wildwood and Lee Park and all these places you've been at for so long, and like Wildwood just celebrated their 20th anniversary. What's it mean to you to be a small piece of that history, that puzzle, whatever you want to call it?
Well, I don't know if I should say this, but I'd probably be there for nothing, just to be part of it.
I'll cut that
And
part out.
if they wouldn't let me announce it, I'd damn sure be there watching it.
Oh, it's cool.
I mean, those are iconic places, like Sundre, like Lee Park, like Wildwood. You know, those are iconic places that people talk about and have for years. And those kind of things mean a little bit more. I mean, there's a lot of things mean more than money. You know, have you been there? Have you seen that? You know, it's really neat.
It's interesting when you get to these places like the Ponokas, the Sundries, the Strathmores, the Lee Parks, and the Wild. Like, it was my first year at Wildwood this year, and the 20th anniversary, which was really cool to be part of. But you can just feel in the arena, like, what it means to be there and be part of it.
Yeah, the people love it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
You know, it's they understand it and they love it and they know it, and you step in at a kind of a different plateau. You know, an ordinary bronc ride there is kind of like ho hum.
Yeah.
You know, they understand what's good and they love it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and for you, Robert, like, you're kind of just making your way into this new kind of the next level for you. What's it mean to you to kind of be part of these amazing events?
I think it's a complete honor to be a part of these events, especially some of the largest rodeos in Canada, and to do it alongside Doug at a lot of these rodeos that I get to work. I worked my very first amateur rodeo finals, the CCA finals, with Doug alongside him. I was hired to read the sponsors. And I'll never forget, I sat down beside Doug, and I was nervous just to read the sponsors that night. And Doug, you looked over at me, you said, "I don't got any ego, Robert, so you jump in whenever you feel like it." And I was like, I'm hired to read the sponsors, and I'm going to be the best darn sponsor reader the CCA finals has ever seen. So we've worked, I think, the CCA finals 6 or 7 times together now, and then my very first pro rodeo weekend, I worked Brooks by myself, and then after that, I was alongside Doug again at TP Creek. So it's kind of like a lot of firsts in my career alongside Doug Young, and honestly, like I said, it's an honor to be a part of those rodeos, and it's an honor to work alongside a guy like Doug that is one of the very best in the entire world ever, and doesn't have an ego for it.
Great,
and I'm pumping your tires pretty hard right now, Doug, but it's so rightfully deserved. And like you said, to me it doesn't matter if it is one of the largest rodeos in Canada or just a long time running rodeo. I worked Radville CCA rodeo last weekend. That rodeo, my dad talks about going to that rodeo when he was a kid in the 70s,
cool place,
and
man.
kind of the same thing. The buck shoots haven't changed, the arena hasn't changed, but the sense of community and the way everybody pulls together at whether it's a small rodeo or a large rodeo, and everybody bands together for something that's a part of Western Canadian culture is truly special. And to me, it doesn't matter what rodeo it is. It's pretty cool to be on the microphone and commentating those rides of some of the best that ever were, or some of the best that yet to come.
Well, that's a question I want to ask both of you, because I guess all three of us have deep roots in the CCA and the amateur associations in Canada. Starting with you, Doug, like, what's it been like seeing that evolution over the years? Like, you had Cody Snyder's a CCA champion bull rider, the Johansson brothers, you got the Hay boys, Davy Shields Jr. road steers in the CCA. Just seeing the amateur, or like the evolution of the contestants coming from the beginnings to making the CFR.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I think they've all been through there a time or two, and the CCA is pretty professionally run.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
Like, I think the main thing is the traveling distance from, those Saskatchewan-based rodeos on over here. It's a little easier now because I can remember when everybody drove in a pickup at 80 above with the window open, with no air conditioning and a stock trailer behind. I mean, traveling just wasn't available. And there's a lot of people got their start there, but I think it was a very professional start in a lot of ways. And I think it's still well regarded by a lot of people, particularly the rough stock guys. A lot of outstanding timed event guys come on out of there, and they're able to hold their heads up pretty much anywhere.
Well, you see, there's a lot of, even when I was younger, like a lot of the years, the bull riding would be just as tough as any pro rodeo you'd go to, like the level of bulls and quality of guys. The year a bunch of you guys were in the junior bull riding at the CCA Finals Rodeo, you rode bulls that were tough enough to go to CFR. That was outstanding. I felt so sorry for you guys. Oh, it was crazy.
like the guys that don't know any different. You guys didn't know any different.
No.
That's all you had to ride, and you all bailed in there. And there was you and Tanner Byrne and Dakota Butter.
Yeah,
and,
it was wild.
yeah. And I mean, that's the kind of start you guys got.
Yeah,
It was wonderful.
I remember getting on some of those bulls that year because me and Dakota were the only two guys riding two hands at that time in the junior bull riding, and I think the loop on my rope was like maybe this big on like 4 out of 5 of the bulls I got on that week. It was scary, but yeah, you don't know any better at that point, right? And it helps the building blocks. Like, look how great of a career Dakota had, how great of a career has, or a great career bull riding career Tanner had. Like it's really like springboarded a lot of these guys to big time success.
Right? Yeah.
Robert, yeah, for you, what's like you've kind of seen the next generation of CCA. I guess Doug has too, but
yeah, we have, and even going back to Radville, and some of the contestants that were entered here in the opening night of Sundry, they were in Radville at the CCA rodeo. They're kind of bouncing back and forth and jumping into the semi-pros and the pro waters, I guess, and throwing their hat in the ring, and it's really cool to see that, and that's been really special for me over the course of the last 10 years on the microphone is I talked about, I think I mentioned it to Brenda in the announcer's booth last night, that I saw this girl in the breakaway rope her very first calf at the junior rodeo
so cool,
in Weyburn, Saskatchewan, and now she's at the Sundry Pro Rodeo. So it's really very cool for me to be a part of those kids' careers right from the very first time they nod their heads to the PBR Canada events, the CPRA events, and to watch them succeed in the arena is pretty special, and have that story to tell along the way. For me, it's not as much. I haven't been at the higher levels for as many years as Doug to see the legends that came before. But I had my own heroes in the arena as well. With some legends from Saskatchewan mostly, obviously. And then even when I moved out to Alberta and spent that time in Medicine Hat and Lethbridge, the people that you meet along the way just help grow your career.
it's wild. And I guess for you, Doug, what's it mean when you see a kid who's got to start in the CCA and the juniors or whatever it may be, and then they make their way and you start seeing them show up at the pro rodeos and start to have success and make their CFRs? It's got to be cool because you get to see that journey the whole way through, which most people don't.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have the eye that a lot of people have. I can remember going to the bronc riding school they used to have in Vermilion because they had a PBR at the end of it. And I can remember walking in there, and it was kind of ho-hum. All these kids were just kind of riding in there, and Mel Highland was there, and he mentioned how good Colby Wanchuk was. I couldn't see that. And they had a bull riding school after that, or at the same time. And I ran into Winston Bruce, and we were visiting, and he said, "There's a boy here from BC," he said, "that's going to be pretty outstanding." It was Justin Voles.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
But those two gentlemen that know what they're doing could tell at that time. And you see that, and you see people get better, and you see them get here to the pros, and they get that extra edge. And they learn how to win, and they get grittier. You got to get tougher.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it's good to see them rise to that. You know, some don't. Some have career-ending injuries, and you never see them again. And that's the other side of it. But it's really nice to watch those that want it excel.
That's cool. Like, I even think back to when Dakota transitioned from the juniors to the pros and the open. Like, he caught a lot of flack because he rode two hands on those junior bulls for years and years, and they didn't think he could make it. And you speak to that grit. Like, he just went after it and found a way and won. I think it was 2 or 3 in a row Canadian championships.
Yeah, Dakota did everything in baby steps.
Yeah.
He won every amateur association, going slowly and slowly with total purpose all the way through. That guy's a thinker. I'm sure he planned every day and every ride all the way through, and it's been very successful.
Oh, it's been fun to watch. Production, which we've kind of danced around a little bit since we sat down and started this, but you mentioned how in the early days wasn't much for production, but how has that change been like for you over the years? Obviously, you bring in a sound guy, you bring in a TV crew, all these different aspects of it.
So So before you answer this, Doug, I wanna jump in here and have my 2 cents on it.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to Wacey about it. I've talked to you about it, and we talk about the filling and how it's easy to talk about your friends and everything like that. As an announcer that's coming in the days of production with the music directors, as you work so much with the music directors or the entertainers or the sideline interviewers or any other extras that they throw in on a performance, that I've missed out, I feel sometimes, on the ability to be able to fill in
Yeah.
the way some guys do. And there is some nights where I stand here looking at Doug. Last year, a big work, and if the tractor breaks down in the middle of the arena and they go, "Oh, you guys, we need 6 minutes," Doug will start talking, and I'll find myself with a microphone down by my hip, just staring at him, going, "How do you guys do this?"
Yeah.
And I really think it's an art that some of us guys that haven't been working at it as long, we aren't as skilled at it, and the way that you can tell a story for 5 to 6 minutes about the committees and the families and everybody involved, and it just makes perfect sense the whole time, and then leads right back into the rodeo. I think it's so cool to listen to, and I love listening to guys like Doug and Dave and Les McIntyre, the guys that can tell that story and fill the voids when they need to be filled, whereas so many of us younger guys that have been working with more production at our fingertips, we can rely on the music guys, and we can rely on the rodeo clowns to fill in, or the side. We'll go to a quick interview or a video. We'll throw a pump up video or a sponsor video in, and it's easy to fill, and it makes our timing for those setups maybe an art in itself. But the true art is like without any music and anything, just a microphone and a guy talking, and I find myself listening to the veterans and just being like, oh, it's so cool to listen to.
A lot of things are just born out of necessity. And I think that's probably it. I can remember the first time I saw, a live band. They used to have a live band
playing during the rodeo,
right, at Lee Park. When the horses bucked, the band started.
Wow.
When the guy got off the horse, the band quit. Went from that to we used to carry our own cassettes. And it was a big move up when we got a double head cassette tape, because then we could load two.
Have one couple
yeah,
queued up.
Yeah, exactly. But it's amazing with everything that we've got and all these things and all the planning that we have. The livestock still calls a show.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean,
yeah.
something can happen, and as long as a lot of us have been around it, wow, never seen that before. What do we do here? So as much as you plan, the best laid plans, it's still unique.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and what was it like moving through those times? Like you say, you had a live band to the cassettes. They start bringing in music directors. Did you ever find it was hard to adapt? For you, probably wasn't. But did you ever get thrown off a little bit by all the new elements, or?
No, it got easier.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and then it kind of took a little of the freestyling out of it.
Yeah.
You got to pay attention to what's happening here now. And some ways it's easier, some ways it's tougher, but it's a better product for the people that are watching it, for sure. And the people that are in the business are absolutely awesome at what they do. Sean Martin's here.
He's world class, that guy.
Sean has been setting up equipment for 2 days.
Yeah.
I mean, theoretically, he was done in an hour and a half. He's been tweaking for the last 2 days, so that person over there in the far corner can hear properly.
Well, and that's I worked sound for a long time. I worked with both of you guys, and I will speak up for sound guys here. It's going to be one of the most thankless jobs at a rodeo. You have people coming at you, turn it up, it's not loud enough, we can't hear over there, you can't hear over there. So the guys who really care about that, it's not an easy job, and it helps you guys out in the long run too.
You're right. It's a thankless job, and there's a true art to being a good sound guy, and we've both had the opportunity to work with some of the very best in the world at the events that we work in, and I can name 5 to 6 or 7 of you off the top of my head and I've told guys like that. Actually, Lane LaPlante and I were talking about it, and I said to Lane, I said, Lane, if you guys can set the tone with the music and the ride and the way you can switch up the songs and create a moment for the crowd and a lasting memory, I said, honestly, us announcers, we don't even matter. If you put some classical song behind us, it's not going to sound that dramatic. But your song choices is what makes us sound better. and I think the ability to work with a sound man is something truly special, and I love that we have some really talented sound guys in Canada.
How does it help you, Doug? Or you can speak to this too, Robert, I'm sure, but having a quality sound guy to help build the momentum you talk about, or like filling those moments or creating those moments, like it's got to be a huge piece of the puzzle nowadays.
Well, it takes a huge load off your plate. Like, we used to carry our own sound system, so we're not only responsible for doing the rodeo, we got to make the sound system work. And it was like, we lost 50% of the job right there. Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Good deal. You know. So, yeah, it's neat. And to know that those people are there and how good they are, it gives you such a feeling of calm that you can go ahead and kind of let your hair down and think about what you're going to say.
Yeah, a bit more intent in that regard. I want to talk milestones, Doug. Yeah, I want to talk milestones of your career. I know you are known as a loyal guy. You've worked at some of these rodeos for a long time, but you got to work the Calgary Stampede, some of the biggest rodeos in Canada. But what are some of those milestones that you've had throughout your career that kind of come to mind as we sit here?
Oh, there's been a lot of things. You know, I've seen so many awesome horses, so many awesome rides, met so many really neat people. You know, so many similarities between, excuse me, all of them. You know, as I said earlier, I saw Airwolf buck for the first time. You know, he kicked all the planks out behind the chute. They were dropping planks in as quick as they could. I saw Robin Burwash and him tangle one time, and they went from side to side across the arena in front of us, and the lateral movement from that horse were absolutely outstanding. One of the best saddle bronc rides I ever saw was Tyler Craft one time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, sitting back, and you know, he was 17 years old.
Wow.
He had a ton of try. And to watch him excel on the other side of rodeo now with the horses, which is not a surprise.
No.
I mean, his dad and I worked together, and his dad started out with better horses than I ever had. And while most of us were trying to ride remanufactured jugheads, Don Kraft would go out and buy really good horses, you know, and then he would spend a lot of time on them and do, you know, outstanding things with them. Last night we saw the reigning pickup horse of the world, Pickup Bronx, perform in the barrel racing and carry a 9-year-old junior into the barrel racing, and that's just common stuff for those people. Those horses are that good, and you see the same calmness in behind the chutes, and you know, with watching the little craft kids now around those horses that we saw with Tyler and his brothers around their dad, you know, with their horses at that time. So, yeah, just a lot of things that kind of continue on, and the really neat part is watching the next generations.
Yeah, it's crazy to see even now, like, you see Leighton Green walking around with his little girl and Zeke's little kids. Like, it's the family element of rodeo. I think it's not overlooked, but I mean, we talk about it quite a bit, but it's really something you don't find anywhere else.
No, and I think there's more accent on family with the people in the world of rodeo. You know, it's all family first. I mean, if something's wrong with their family, they're gone. You know, they just wouldn't be here. If sometimes somebody said, we need you at home, it's not unusual to see somebody not here. And where were you last weekend? Well, this is what happened. And it was at home. You know, it's family first, and you don't see that anymore. No. The stars really don't matter. It's what goes on at home.
One thing I wanted to ask you about too, Doug, is and you've seen it for so many years, and this is no knock against the prior generations, but rodeo athletes have evolved so much in even the last 5 years. Like, the amount of work they put in outside the arena, in the gym, fitness, nutrition, even the business of rodeo has changed so much. Like, how has that been through your lens? Yeah,
I think, you know, a lot of us, if I think back 20 or 30 years, probably 35 years, a lot of the people that you saw weren't just cowboys on the weekend. They cowboyed, and you don't find cowboys anymore. You don't find guys that ride horses 8 hours a day. And for the bulk of us that got to a rodeo arena on the weekend, this was fun because it was like firefighters going to a firefighter rodeo, you know? I mean, here we are, we can party, you know, we can compete against our buddies and show how good we are and how good they are, and look at his horses and trade some horses and visit, and you were among like-minded people. Now people have taken that and they've gone down the line with that. Like, Yeah, we're going to be serious about this.
Yeah.
We've got better nutrition. We can watch the video on that horse. We're here and we're serious. This costs money. We're going to do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And hats off to all of them. Yeah, they get it done right.
Well, how cool has it been to see the kind of living people can make now in rodeos? Even in Canada, like the amount of money available to win, like it's gone up so much in the last few years. And you look at I talked to Oren Larson a couple weeks ago, and he said the first year he made the NFR, I think he was 10th place with 80,000 won, and he made 128,000 last year and was 16th or 17th in the world. Like it's crazy amount of available money out there now.
Yeah, that's where it should have been.
Yeah.
For a long, long time. These guys don't play games. There's people playing games getting paid a lot more money than what goes on in the rodeo arena. Mm-hmm. And I think we're just finally seeing the quality of entertainment and athleticism with the remuneration for it at the other end.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's wild. A couple more things before we wrap this up, and I'll let you guys go about your day before we rodeo here in Sundre. But I really wanted to ask you about Archie Ashbacker. You and I talk about him a lot. He's close to you. My dad worked for him for a long time, and then just seeing what Dwayne and Cole and everything that family has done in rodeo. What's that been like? And maybe throw in a couple fun Archie stories if you can think of any. They're my favorite.
Well, the Ashbackers were our neighbors, and they're the best neighbors we ever had. The best people in the world. Archie taught me more than any other man I've ever been around. Mm-hmm. And your dad will attest to that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he had a different outlook on life. When he shook your hand, when your hand went in that big paw, that was gospel. There was no coming off of that. He looked at things from a different angle, and he taught everybody that family was first. Mm-hmm. And get it done right, and your word better be good. I hung around him a lot, and he could, there's nobody anymore that knows how to move 60 head of horses from point A to point B, especially if they're wildies. Well, Archie grew up around Fritz Payton that used to put on rodeos back in the 30s and 40s, and they'd leave in the spring with their bucking horses, Fritz and 2 or 3 guys, and they'd go to a town like Sundre, and they'd put on a rodeo. They'd be there for 2 or 3 days. And there's just so much stockmanship that those people had. And when you're around people like that, you kind of see that next upper level, and they know that you see that, and it's just really neat to be around. And Archie taught me more than anybody I can ever be around. Archie and Gwen were absolutely solid gold. And you see that in Dwayne. Mm-hmm. You see it in Cole. Whenever we see Cole on TV, Colleen and I look at each other and we go, Archie loved that.
Yeah. It was cool. One of my favorite Archie stories was when my dad was working for him. We were hanging out at the house for the weekend, and my brother and I we had a hammer and a bucket of nails, and we're hammering nails into whatever we could find. And my dad starts giving us shit, and then Archie pipes up. He's like, "You let those kids hammer whatever they want, just because we're like learning how to use a hammer and a nail, right?" And just I always laugh about that because it's pretty funny stuff.
Yeah, when our kids were little, we went there one time, and our kids were doing the same thing. And Archie looked at me. He says, "You got to let them fall down." He says, "Let them fall down. They got their whole lives to learn how to get up." He says, "Let them fall down.
Yeah,
let them fall here. Don't let them fall out there."
No, and that's the best advice for sure.
And it was just words of wisdom like that just came at you 100 miles an hour with a different twist to it.
Yeah. Well, there's one story that I'm thinking of. You told me a couple times. Was you guys were like sorting horses or trying to rope horses, and he was pushing them to you through a barn? Is that ringing a bell?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that one. You guys,
we were there one day, and he said, "We're halter breaking some colts."
That's
he
right.
said, "Can you rope some colts for us?" And yep, you bet. So anyway, the colts kind of came by. They came from behind and went around, and there was, 4 or 5 horses went by, and they were probably 1,400 pounders, and I'm standing there swinging my rope waiting for the colts to come by, and Archie comes around the corner, and he's kind of huffing and puffing, and he says, "Well, you never caught him one." And I said, "Well, I was waiting for the colts to come by." "Those were the colts," he said. They weren't colts.
Yeah. That's good stuff. I want to jump back to 2024. You guys are both fortunate enough, myself included, to work at the 50th Canadian Finals Rodeo. A huge moment, returning back to Edmonton, being in Rogers Place. But starting with you, Doug, what was it like being part of that and just seeing the pinnacle of rodeo, the 50th year, being in a building like Rogers and all the great moments that you were on the mic for?
Oh, man. To take you back, the first time I ever really got a sense of what was going on in a rodeo arena at a high level was at Agribition. And I was cowboying at the time, and I got to go with the guys at the end of the day to the Agribition Rodeo and see Bob Tallman. And it was just like amazing to watch him work. He worked horseback, and that was just amazing. And then that fall, we went to the Canadian Finals Rodeo, and I think it was 1976. And I was just amazed by everything that was going on about, you know, the way they did the grand entry and things were happening. Production was just coming into it. And I can remember walking into Rogers Place last fall and going, holy cow, I'm part of this.
Yeah.
You know, it's just absolutely unbelievable, just from my standpoint. But that was a different deal last year.
Yeah.
That was a show. That was world class
amazing.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like? And I think a favorite moment for a lot of people from that week was Cody Lamb 92 and a quarter on Virgil to win the Friday night round, and that was one of my favorite things about the whole week. Was like there was a lot of opportunities for moments to happen, like matchups or situations, and a lot of time that doesn't pan out for us, unfortunately. But when it does, it's amazing, and it seemed to happen one thing after another. But what was it like calling Cody's ride on, or witnessing Cody's ride on Virgil?
Oh yeah. You could feel what was going to go on, and you could see it. Everybody that was there was kind of backing up and looking at it, and you knew that he was more than capable. And Virgil's Virgil.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, stand back, watch, take a look, and yeah, those moments don't come along every day. No. You know, and those moments happen at every CFR. You know, that happened in Red Deer too. Those are the kind of things that people see there every year. The best against the best. You know, it's the stars align, but you got to give it the opportunity to align. You know,
So. Robert.
Yeah. CFR 50 was my very first CFR, not just working it,
Yeah,
but that was my very first CFR. I had
Awesome.
never even been to a Canadian Finals Rodeo. So to be a part of it, it was almost shocking. I felt like for the first couple of days, I was almost walking around in a haze, and I arrived 2 days early to get ready for the broadcast and to work alongside Dave up in the broadcast booth. And where they had us was right at the top of Section 1 alongside the radio broadcasters. And we could get a sense of the energy in that building in every single round. That record-breaking Friday night was insane. And it would have been something for TV if they had a camera on us up there, because we were the only two guys and a cameraman in our area. And I think for a lot of it, I was standing up, jumping around, waving my hands. There was times where I had to just calm myself down throughout the rodeo, because I just became another fan talking about the events happening in the arena. And again, like Cody Lamb, there were some pretty special moments. William Barrows being an invitee or rolling up due to Jared being injured and not being able to compete. I've announced William Barrows' career since he was a junior steer rider, right? And watched him grow up and knew that he was destined for bigger things. So for him to come from 13th to win a Canadian championship was, I don't know if William knew, but it was almost emotional for me to be talking about it up there and watching him live out a childhood dream, right? And I almost get emotional talking about it right now because I just love it so much. But and in the team roping too, same thing with Cavis Drake at Agribition. Back in 2015 or something like that. He was a little kid, him and Denham, as two kids in the final of the Canadian Dummy Roping Championship. And it was between the two of them. And then last year to be teamed up at Cavis's first CFR and to win his Canadian Championship. And in that final round, they had to be 3.9 or 3.8, whatever they were. And they were. Like, did we believe that it was going to happen? Maybe not, but I sure hoped it did, and it did happen. So I said that at the conclusion of that run is how bad do you want a Canadian championship? And obviously they came to win, and they got it done. So it was like you said, those moments just happen at places like the Canadian Finals Rodeo, and it was so cool to be a part of it. One of my biggest takeaways or keepsakes from the finals was the hockey pucks. I don't know if you guys got a hockey puck,
I
but
didn't get a hockey puck. What the heck?
on one side of it says Rogers Place and has a picture of the building, and on the other side the CPRA logo, the Canadian Finals Rodeo logo, and the CFR 50, and that sits on a shelf in our dining room.
Cool.
Actually, it's pretty cool.
Oh, go ahead.
It's pretty neat for me because I get to work alongside Brett.
Yeah.
And Brett's amazing. He's absolutely amazing. Brett is really talented, and there seems to be kind of two kinds of people that are talented and people that aren't, that really work at it. Brett's really talented, but he'll work your tail off, and he's not scared to put in more work than anybody else. And throw in the fact that he actually cares about people, it's an easy gig for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm there beside him. I don't think that we give him enough credit for what goes on.
Yeah, it's amazing what he does and what he's done. Like, he's just elevated the game, right? Like, I think for everybody. And that kind of was going to be my final question for you, Doug, is what has it been like to kind of see the next crop of announcers coming up? You got like Robert, you got Jonathan Cole, Dom St. Amand. Brett's been leading the way for a long time now, and I don't mean to leave anybody out, but what's that been like just to kind of see the next generation of rodeo announcer make their way?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like we talked about with the Bronc Riders. I think there's a kind of a new level now, and I think those levels are going to continue to build. I remember when Skip Kelleher first asked me to announce a rodeo, I said, no, those guys are gunsels. I said, those guys don't know anything about rodeo. And I tell you, I'd sat at a rodeo. I'd been shoeing a horse, and I went and sat in the stands for a minute or two while I was waiting for another one, and the announcer did such a poor job of explaining what was going on in the stands. There was a couple behind me that thought everybody was just idiots. And, that's the kind of opinion I had. But now that's been turned around.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's going to get better. Like guys like this, I mean, things are really going to happen in the next while.
Yeah, I think we've seen it across the board with Canadian rodeo as a whole has improved. Like, and this is not a knock to the prior generations, and they're the building blocks of what this is today. But you see it, like the team roping is getting faster, the tie down roping is getting faster, the barrel racing is getting tougher, the bronc riding, we know what that is, and we're slowly seeing just the quality just get higher and higher as we move through these years.
Yeah, and I think people are doing a better job of explaining what's going on. We're a long ways away now from our Western heritage.
Yeah.
And we're in lots of ways kind of out of touch with reality. People don't see these skills used every day. There's people roping calves every day, people riding horses every day, but it's just not the norm anymore. And we have to do a better job of explaining to people what's going on and, the reasons that we do it. Yeah.
Well, I'm thankful there's guys like you, guys like Robert, Brett, kind of that whole crop doing that for us, because I think we have some of the best announcers and production people in the game in Canada, which we often get overlooked, but that's what it is. But thankful for guys like you, and I'm thankful that I was able to corral you guys into sitting down with me for an hour. I've been, like I said, trying to get this done for a long time, and I'm just proud to call you guys my friends, and yeah, it's been fun to roll into where we're at now.
Well, thank you for having us, Wacey, and you got us on camera.
Yeah,
so
there you
go. That's a feat in
Let's
itself.
hope the recording worked, hey?
Yeah.
Awkward as it was, we both have faces for radio.
Yeah.
So
that's what my dad's always told me too, and I still find a way on camera. So Here we are. All right, guys, I'll let you go. We'll wrap this up. And yeah, this has been episode, I think, 38 of the short round, and we'll catch you guys next time.